Hey, good morning. I don't know, Sharice, is that you in the waiting room or Vaporama or I don't know who it'll be. So, morning. It is the 5th of January, Friday. It's Friday. I just got done with on call. I haven't been live in like 2 days. My sleep schedule is wrecked. My schedule is wrecked. And yeah, on call was rough the last 2 days. I haven't slept yet today yet either at all. Everything's a mess. So, having said that, um, it's so weird. Monday was really good, and then what day was it? Tuesday? Man, Tuesday I like emotionally fell off a cliff. I don't know if it was because my schedule was so misaligned to what I'm used to or what because I went on well, just moment of transparency. I'm not very good at taking vacation. And so this year I just like made a concentrated effort to take vacation. So I took like a week and a half off and that threw my schedule out of misalignment. I just thought about this today and then when I went on call, obviously my sleep schedule got good morning Vaporama. My sleep schedule, how you doing? Good morning Zephyr. Yeah, no, I can't do power naps. I'll just die. But I am dude, my sleep schedule got it's so good to see y'all. I wondered if you thought I was dead. So my sleep schedule got absolutely slaughtered because yeah, on call just destroyed me. And then yesterday I was off on call, but I still had to answer a call for the Shields credit card printers. I'm in charge of the server that houses all the printers for all the Shields credit card printers in the nation. And so if something goes wrong there, doesn't matter if I'm on call or not, I'm the one that has to take care of it. So I basically was on call yesterday too. And I took a week and a half vacation this year because I was like, okay, I'll try it. And so that threw my rhythm kind of off a little bit just in life. And then on call happened and now everything's just a mess. And so like Tuesday I felt like I emotionally like fell off a cliff. It was weird. I really struggled Tuesday. And here's another thing about hey Steve, what up, man? Here's another thing about taking a daily journal. This is why it really helps is and this will go into what I talk about today and I'm just going to go over chapter 15 again um, in regards to Abraham's story because God tells him something and he starts to doubt it. And so for instance, me, I was doing very strong Monday. I felt great. And then Tuesday, I like felt really off bad. Like I was kind of a wreck. I was a wreck. No, I just was. And so during those times, which everyone has them, having a daily journal, like you can look back to like yesterday or the day before and see like how you were feeling just then, you know? Um, and it helps a lot because it helps you like pinpoint what could have happened to cause you to feel like that. And it does make you feel a little bit less crazy because when you let emotions take control and whatnot, it'll really just wreck your schedule and everything and just your mindset for the whole day. And it can continue on for like a long time. But having like that daily journal, I can look back and I was like, okay, so I was like good up until like this. It's so crazy because you forget in the times of stress and struggle what it was just like hours before. Hey, hi, Therese. How's Disneyland? Are you over there? You're in Elevation at a hotel, going to Elevation Church. All right, so I'm going to start in, again, Genesis 15. I've already read this before once, but I wanted to go over it again. And it is called The Lord's Covenant with Abraham. It's right after he rescues Lot from that king. And that king of Sodom said, give me the people and keep the goods for yourself. But Abraham was like, no, I'm not keeping the goods from this like victory. I don't want anyone to say that you did anything for me. I want everyone to know that God gets the glory. So that was a big deal. And then, so after that, it says, starting at verse 1, chapter 15, it said, After this, the word of the Lord came to Abraham in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abraham. I am your shield, your very great reward. But Abram said, O sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless? And the one who will inherit my estate is Eleazar of Damascus. And Abram said, You have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir. So he's basically saying, I don't have any kids. I'm old. You know, I want there to be like a bloodline for my inheritance to pass through rather than my servant. He wants a son or a child. And then in verse 4 it says, Then the word of the Lord came to him, This man will not be your heir, but a son coming from your own body will be your heir. He took him outside and said, Look up at the heavens and count the stars. If indeed you can count them, then he said to him, So shall your offspring be. Abram believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. He also said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to take possession of it. But Abram said, O sovereign Lord, how can I know that I will gain possession of it? So the Lord said to him, Bring me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon. Abram brought all these to him, cut them in two, and arranged the halves opposite each other. The birds, however, he did not cut in half. Then birds of prey came down on the carcass, but Abram drove them away. As the sun was setting, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and a thick and dreadful darkness came over him. Then the Lord said to him, Know for certain that your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and they will be enslaved and mistreated 400 years. But I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterwards they will come out with great possessions. You, however, will go to your fathers in peace and be buried at a good old age. In the 4th generation, your descendants will come back here, for the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure. When the sun had set and darkness had fallen, a smoking firepot with a blazing torch appeared and passed between the pieces. On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram and said, To your descendants I give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, to the Euphrates, the land of the Kenites, Kenizzites, Cabanites, Hittites, Perizzites, Raphites, Amorites, Canaanites, Gigashites, and Jebusites. So what I really like here is Abram, again, the character that's like touted as having a faith that we should strive to achieve. And he's like the father of this nation, which God is telling him. He's like, hey, count the stars, and that's how numerous your people, how numerous the seed that I am giving you to plant, how numerous the harvest from that seed is going to be in regards to actual people, like your nation. And he's also telling him, he's giving him a heads up about how his people will be a stranger in a country not their own, and they will be enslaved and mistreated for 400 years. But he's going to punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterward they will come out with great possessions. So this is the promise that when you fast forward to Exodus, the Israelites will see. And it's important to note that all this is told to Abram, and he's already seen miraculous things in his life. He's already seen God do crazy, miraculous stuff in his life. He just got done fighting multiple kings and passing up the rewards from that battle, basically. And yet you still see him struggle with believing that God can bring about a miracle in his life, which at this point, it seems kind of not even a big deal. Like he's like, I don't have anyone to give my inheritance to. He could just basically ask God for that. And based on like the past events that's happened with Abram right now, you would figure that his faith would be at a point where he could basically just ask God and have faith that he would, deliver on his ask, because obviously God has already spoke to Abram directly, and he's been like, hey, I'm choosing you to do X, Y, and Z, to be the father of a nation and to do something that is different from all other people on this planet, the planet. And Abram has that promise in his head. He's heard that. He's heard God spoke to him directly in a supernatural way. And yet the spirit of truth guiding him and having spoken to him personally is not enough to keep him from doubting himself at times and from doubting a dream that he has in his head. And so he like brings it to God in a manner of, this is a concern, dude. Like, my servant is going to inherit everything that I have. And it's also interesting how God told him that he was going to be a great nation and that he will bless him and make his name great. And all people on earth will be blessed through him. And yet Abram he's still struggling. He must not completely believe it or understand it, because he's telling God he'll remain childless, right? And maybe Abram's like, well, how's this going to happen? Maybe you're going to pass it through me handing off the torch to my servant. And I love how transparent he is and how they took the time, how God made this story to display that even the greatest man of faith, quote unquote, even the chosen person of God to bring about the great nation, his chosen people, even him, he had doubts, right? And does anyone else relate to that? Like, you can have like miracles happen and just the next day you're completely a wreck because of something stupid. Like, that's how I feel too. Like, I know, like, biologically and psychologically, like, it has a lot to do with, just for instance, this past Tuesday for me. I know it, like, I'm smart enough now or wise enough now to been through enough to been through enough emotional trauma and like ups and downs in life to know that, there's things that I do, or there's things that affect me in certain ways that end up resulting in me feeling a certain way. And I have mistaken things being rooted to something when it wasn't really rooted to that. And I can be feeling completely great, all like, oh, God's going to do X, Y, and Z for me. Or maybe God did do something for me, just like Abram, right? Like, I felt like God like spoke to me, but then just like the next day, I can be just a mess because of something really stupid or nothing, right? And yeah, Charisse can relate. And it's so crazy. Like, if you read stories in the Bible, even if you don't believe this to be true, like God to be an actual entity, to be the creator of the universe, what you can pull away from this is like, you can go downhill emotionally really fast like that for no apparent reason, really. Like, and it's even more so if you don't like have your finger on the pulse of your, I don't know how I would say, your emotional frequency, or what do they call that? I'm running on 0 hours of sleep, so my brain isn't firing off too hot, but like a heartbeat monitor, you know? It's it's hard. We see over and over, like in Exodus, you'll see, or even here, like in Exodus, you'll see the Israelites, they'll get blessed by God, and then they'll just screw up like right away, you know? And you just read that and you're like, what are you doing? How could you do that? But the more I live and the closer I've gotten with God, the more I can relate to them, as weird as that sounds. Because I didn't really have my finger on the pulse of it before. But God can bless me and I can get so caught up in like the things of this world all the time because they feel, I don't know if real is the right word, but man, I can have like such a good day and wake up the next day and just feel off. And it can just like cause a downward spiral where I'll just like mentally go off into oblivion by choice. And it can turn into resentment and bitterness, which when you start going down the path of like self development, you know that's bad for you. And then it drives you even more nuts because you know you're enacting behavior that is bad for you, but you're continuing to do it anyway. And then if you have a faith in a God that's outside of your logic and reason, it's really easy. It's really easy to get bitter towards that too and have a negative feedback loop there too. Yeah. Yeah. And yep, exactly, Steve. Thanks for God's grace and mercy. That's true. Absolutely. And it is real doesn't mean it's true. Yep. And there's something about properly aligning your belief in your faith where it's something about positioning yourself as being a servant and like a living sacrifice where your peace doesn't make sense, where you can have peace throughout times where maybe you shouldn't by earthly standards. And I just thank God so much that he has it described in the text that he's given us to go by that like people struggled with this as well. And I don't know, because it's like our life's built of relationships here in this world with people. And then the way we interact with them, it can kind of reflect what our belief is about God and what God can do through people. And that and our belief in God's understanding and what he's doing might not make any sense in the way that we're perceiving it now, even when we're just interacting with other people and seeing what they're doing. Because I was talking to Sharice about this. I can get so wrapped up in what I expect people to be doing that I can just like write them off and think that they're not for me when God had like a huge, prosperous journey with them for them and I if we were to be friends. But since I'm not seeing it in the way that I would expect, I just write it off. And that's just like an example of trusting God outside of your logic and reason for that. Does that make sense? It's so hard. And I can't even. And then you start in days that you really struggle with things. Man, it drives me nuts because when you devote so much time to optimizing life and your habits and monitoring your thoughts and who you're around, when you struggle, then it kind of makes it worse because you're like, I know the right play. I know what to do. About to kick you off the bus. No. And the fact that you know what to do or feel like you know what to do, or like you're spending more time learning how to better your own life in ways that is greater than the average person, quote unquote, it makes me even more, I feel more guilt kind of in a way if I don't position myself correctly under God, like ideologically, because I spent all this time trying to make my life better. and I can still just like fall off the bus or the wagon or whatever just the next day after nothing's happened. And it drives me insane. I don't know if anyone else struggles with that, about how you spend time optimizing your life, and then when you get down in a slump, you start crucifying yourself in a manner which is really cancerous and toxic. And it makes it worse than if you would have just never been working on yourself at all. Does anyone else struggle with that at all? Because say there's like 2 people in here that are part of that Daniel's Den group, right? Steve and Charisse. And I've kind of been in a season where how do I explain it? I don't want I'm not seeking motivation, like external motivation to fuel me anymore. Like I'm just not. And I feel like I'm in a season of execution, which requires a lot of internal faith. And there's times in the journey, like Abraham, where you doubt things. And it brings me a lot of peace to know that even the man of faith in the Bible went to God and was like, yo, what's going on here with this section of my life? I'm doubting it. And what I struggle with myself is when you believe God's spoken to you about something and then you start struggling, you can start asking God, like, why, if you want me to do what you told me, what I have perceived as you telling me to do, why am I going through this? Like, what's the point of this? Especially if you feel like you've gotten the message, like you've got the takeaway from it, but God's not done, right? I'm sure you've probably heard that term before. And when you get into a season where motivation ain't doing it from an external source anymore, and you're just like in this one-on-one relationship with God for him to fuel singularly your journey, that conversation with him about why am I going through this problem right now, even though you've spoke to me, I believe you are good. I believe you know what's best for me. You can still have doubts while believing that at the same time. There's a character in the Bible that um I think it's the Roman dude. He goes up to Jesus and he's like, heal this person at my house. I believe that's the story. And Jesus is like, do you believe? And the guy's like, I believe, but help me with my unbelief, which states that you can believe and not believe at the same time, or struggle with it at least. There's a dichotomy in there. It's a paradox. And I'm sure everyone can relate to that. What do you guys think? Do you guys struggle with that? With believing and not believing at the same time? Because I really do. It's so hard. And I can't it's hard to get out of too sometimes. It's like the pain that you feel from this world is just like abysmal at times. It's like unbearable. The pain from relationships and loss and darkness in the world, it's really hard to deal with, especially when it's just by happenstance, right? And there's stories in the Bible where God like tests people through stuff like that. And that's really hard to grasp as to why. It's so hard. And things that help me get through it now, there's been times where in the past it didn't help me get through it because everything's like specific to the season. So it can become confusing. Have you guys ever tried to adopt old traits that used to work for you in a current season, but you still shouldn't have adopted them, but they worked then? I guess not traits, but habits, just as like a desperation move to make things seem better now. And then it just makes everything worse. I've done that a lot because I'll start to think maybe what I heard was wrong, or maybe I mistranslated what God was telling me. And it's, man, I struggle with it a lot. Yeah, he knows what to do little by little. You're right. And it's just God knows what to reveal at the right time. You're right. It's I wouldn't say it's not scary though, because it is. If anyone tells you it's not scary, they're lying. They are lying. It's terrifying. It's it's terrifying because it's it's terrifying to give your life up as like a living sacrifice while everything around you is like the antithesis to what you feel inside. That's very hard. And it's just like anything with dealing with fear. It's like how you deal with it is not by avoiding it. You have to increase your courage to handle it, which is increasing your faith. And some days it's just like, man, this is really hard. And it's like sometimes you're at a loss as to what to do. There's been days when I've uh I've just been like, all right, just get me through today. Like just get me through to the end. That's it. That's my whole goal for today is just get me through. Then I'll fall asleep at my normal time, then wake up and we can start again. And sometimes that's what you have to do. Like I know God's goodness, I know his grace. I know I believe he can do anything. But like Tuesday, for instance, for me was very hard. And then like on call at my job, I didn't even really have time to process it, because like things in your life, like if you're a mother or father, you can have things going on and yet you have to carry the responsibility of having to parent your kids or be a good husband or wife, and you don't have time to deal with the stuff that you need to deal with to make it through. So it's like you compartmentalize it. And sometimes you can forget to bring it back out to work on it again, and it'll just sit there and rot. And it'll become cancer and toxic. Because you can get by a long time without ever bringing it back out again until it like blows up in your face again. And then, like, I'm sure everybody knows people that have said, yeah, I'm going to get a counselor or a therapist, and then they just never do. And then they'll just kind of grow numb to the problem, and then it'll come back up, blow up in their face, and then this just cycle over and over. It's hard to give things to God sometimes. And it's hard to know what giving things to God looks like. Like, that's not a black and white thing, you know? It's not black and white because it looks different from person to person, and there's context and different specific variables for each problem. Like, sometimes giving something to God can mean seeking advice from another person. And sometimes giving something to God can look like getting on your knees and praying alone in isolation. And so it's so complicated because you'll have people giving you advice on what to do, or people know that you're struggling. They'll be like, hey, you should do this because that's what they did for their problem. But God never said that. And that's really hard to deal with. What do you guys do when you encounter that? How do you handle that? The way I handle it, what I usually tell people is I pray God to show me, like help me, and I just go straight to the Bible and I ask him to speak to me through that. That's my first method, always. Like always. Always. What do you do? Let me know. I've seen a lot of I actually have an issue with that kind of with how I see a lot of people's first go-to is the internet and like other sources. I know God can speak through anyone, but I don't understand why people just don't go straight to the source. Like, well, I do understand why. I find it sad that we can get into this habit of just seeking our answers externally rather than drawing from the Holy Spirit and praying to God ourselves and like seeking it out through the Bible. Like the Bible's a big deal, right? And usually when you seek out sources from other people, they went through the process of getting the word from the Bible that you're looking for when you could have just gone straight to the source yourself. I think that happens a lot. And I think it creates this like subconscious reliance on not going to the word yourself, reliance on others going. Like, think about when I started reading the Bible and started doing that process, my understanding of the Bible and my interpretation of it like grew exponentially because I was seeking out God's truth and how it pertained to my life and circumstances myself and my struggling and my faith in the current season I was in, right? Within the parameters that he's given me in this time, myself, like I was looking for it myself. And just that like wrestling with God, it's that has grown my perception of the Bible and my what I see in it a billion fold. And since I've been doing that, I've kind of built up a I don't know. And maybe this is just to me. I don't know if any of you can relate to this, but since I've been going and seeking it out myself, and maybe it's only because God's calling me to share in that way, which I don't really like saying because then other people will be like, yeah, that's why. So I'm not going to do it. But since I've been seeking it out myself, I kind of have a resistance of like seeking it out externally because I trust what God shows me through the Bible more than I do of my interpretation from something I see on the internet or social media or any of the apps. Like I trust my Bible more than videos on the internet. And I think a lot of Christians would say that, But I wonder if they ever, like, look at themselves and they're like, "Wait, but that's not my first go-to." Because I was one of them that did that all the time. Like, if I was feeling down, I would just, like, YouTube something, and then I'd find something, and it'd make me feel better, but then that cycle would happen where I would hit it again. And since I've, like, gone straight to the Word for it, it's helped a lot. Like, that thing that happened to me Tuesday, that's something that would've the duration of it would have been much longer if I wouldn't have had, like, my daily reading of the Bible or going to the Bible myself. Like, how that works is I'll just, like, ask God, "Please show me something, man. Like, show me something." And I'll just open the Bible and start reading, and 95% of the time, I will come to something that brings me more peace, and he'll speak to me through the Word, right? Has anyone else experienced this? I just I'm so grateful that he's given us the Bible. And maybe that's has to do with my I don't know if it's an irritation, but the way I see people's eyes light up when motivational speakers speak and teach, since I've been able to find that through the Word, it's really caused contention within me seeing that. Seeing the influence that people have over people rather than Bible has it has brought up contention in me a little bit. And maybe that's just specific to me, but it's helped me so many times where I'm just like really down, like nothing's going to help me, to the point where if I hear someone speak, because you'll get to a point where it doesn't matter who's saying it, you'll be like, they don't know what I'm going through. They don't know. And you'll delete it. And there's times you get low enough where that happens. And I think that's why building up the habit to go straight to the Word, it helps you, because if you believe God to be true and you believe the Word to be God breathed, that's what Paul describes it as. And if it's divine, that means it's from a being that's outside of logic and reason, and that he has given us this text to help us in this world. If you go straight to that source first, it'll help you in those times where hearing another person, you would discard it because they don't know what you're going through, but you can read the Bible and be like, this is divine. It is from straight from God, right? And it'll help you circumvent that feeling of someone not having been through what you're going through. Because if you believe something straight from God, from the source, you can't really say, hey, he doesn't know what I'm going through, because he put himself into a human vessel and went through the most atrocious thing you can go through, died, went to hell, and conquered death for all of us. He went through the worst thing possible. So we don't have that get out of jail free card, basically. And that happens. So when you're struggling with your faith, my main point, well, I just wanted to talk about that for one, but I think that would be my main, if I could ever tell anybody anything about how to get through moments when you're struggling, is like build up the habit to go straight to the source first. And then after that, go to the external. Because I don't view the Bible as external. I view it as like internal, right? Because if you believe in Jesus, you believe that we have the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit helps you interpret the Bible and him speak through it. It must be pretty important, right? So I really would give that a try. Zephyr, you're like, that makes sense to you? I found myself constantly going through seeking external sources to validate how I feel. And it would help me. It's complicated because it would help me, but I would find myself going through the same thing again. Whereas the Bible has really helped me get over that more so. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I trust the Bible more than I trust any person, anybody at all, at all, at all. And I think that's a good place to wrap up. I'll continue on Hagar and Ishmael tomorrow. Well, no, 16. I'll be asking you. So I think um I think doing this every weekday is good, right? Like I just do. I like it. I need to get, and as my skill grows in doing this, I'll get better at reading the Bible just on camera for one, and then like giving a message and like highlights and points. Like right now, how it works is I'm just like reading it and I'm just saying what I'm thinking. And I'll get to the point where that skill will increase, or I'll have, thank you, Steve. And if you guys don't know, Zephyr and whoever else watches this ever, this coach Steve here, he has a YouTube channel, and he is an amazing story. And Charisse runs a nonprofit, She Rises, for single mothers. They both have channels, and you should support them because they're great people, and they're really trying to do what they perceive as being the best thing they can do to be a positive proponent in this world, which is that's offering yourself up as a sacrifice through your time, and that's commendable. And yeah, so what I was saying is with reading the Bible here, like my skill will get to the point where I'll be able to like interpret things, and then I can like have this array of things in my head, points that are coming up, and I'll be like, okay, I can show this one, this one, this one, based on the amount of time I have. But at the same time, I don't want to get that too constricted, because then it'll just be phony, because I don't work like that. I don't want this to be that. I want this to be pretty fluid and organic. I do not want this to be something where I think bullet points is about as structured as I would go. Because right now I'm not even like reading ahead of time. The only ahead of time that I'll read for this is when I'm literally thinking up a thumbnail title. And that process of doing the thumbnail title and then doing the photo takes like 5 minutes. And it started off taking like 15, so it's getting better. But yeah, I'll be continuing to go live around 8 to 8:30 every day and trying to end by 9, and we'll just see where it goes. Right now I'm just going to keep it to weekdays, I think. I may go tomorrow, I may not. I'm not sure. We'll see. We'll see. I'll ask God about it. I'll go straight to the Bible like I was saying. Regardless, I love you, and if you need anything, get a hold of me. My contact details in the description. And yeah, have a great day, and I hope this helped at all. Yep. I love you so much. Yep. Have a good day. And I'll be praying for all of you. Don't forget, go straight to the source. Try that for a bit. God is so good. Get some sleep. I need sleep really bad. I'm going to stay up all day till my usual bedtime. I'll do jujitsu and kill myself. Then go to bed. All right. Love you. Have a good one. Peace. Thank you for coming.